Today's episode is brought to you by Abby Connect. As the business owner, I know you want growth, and steady growth comes with great customer experiences, which start from that very first phone call. Do your calls go to voicemail? If so, there are so many missed opportunities. And did you know that 85% of callers who only reach a voicemail will hang up and ultimately get very frustrated? You've got to capture those opportunities, and without paying for a full-time receptionist, you can with Abby Connect. Abby Connect is totally unique. You will be assigned a small team of receptionists that customize all of the call handling for you. Unlike the competition, they won't nickel and dime you with add-ons or extra fees. You'll get all of the upfront pricing options in advance. So get your free trial along with a very special offer over at abbyconnect.com, and make sure to mention the Abundant Accountant podcast when you set up your free trial. Once again, head on over to abbyconnect.com. Welcome to the Abundant Accountant Podcast, where all accountants come to learn all the ways to grow your firm. And when you're in doubt, I am here to help you out. So if you're ready to learn and ready to grow your firm, then you're in the right place to sharpen your skills and increase your revenue. Welcome to the Abundant Accountant Podcast, where accounting professionals come to learn the most efficient and powerful ways to grow their firm, sharpen their skills, and have consistent, increasing revenue and even new revenue streams. We cover topics from pricing, value pricing, ideal clients, who to fire, who to get rid of, how do you manage and increase your cash flow, how do you set boundaries with clients, and so much more. So you can stop giving away your time and expertise away for free and actually start getting paid for your value and your worth, which we're talking about today with a very special guest. You'll learn tips and strategies as well as hear from personal interviews from successful accounting professionals in the industry. So this podcast will show you exactly how to create the firm of your dreams full of abundance, depending on how you define it. And also, if you have a quick second, I would be grateful if you would leave a written review and also a rating on Apple Podcast or Google for the show. I always love hearing from you. And if you're an accounting professional, which I think if you're listening to the Abundant Accountant Podcast, you are, then you might be really frustrated and stressed trying to get those right clients that you actually have control over who you work with and how much you can charge. But, not all of them are paying you really what you're worth. So if you need a little support with that, head on over to the 5stepsToabundance.com to get my simple 5-step process that accountants have used to go from waiting around for clients or busy season to actually closing bigger deals with high-level clients who say yes to paying you for what you're worth, no matter how much you charge. And they actually appreciate the work you do for them. So once again, head on over to the 5stepsToabundance.com. If you're interested in collecting higher fees, getting paid for your expertise as a CPA, an accountant, an EA, maybe even have an MBA or a master's in tax, and how you can work a little bit less all year round. So once again, 5stepsToabundance.com. Today on the Abundant Accountant Podcast, we have a very special guest. Our special guest is someone you actually might be familiar with, but if you're not, his name is Eric Green. He is the managing partner of Green Sklarz LLC, which is a boutique tax law firm with offices in New York and Connecticut. He's an attorney, he's a CPA, he's got a master's in tax, and he's also the founder of Tax Rep LLC, which is a coaching program for accountants and attorneys to build their IRS representation practice. He actually hosts a podcast too, which I was featured on, called the Tax Rep Network Podcast. So you can find that in Apple Podcast and I'm sure on Google too. Eric is also the author of Accountant's Guides to IRS Collections, Resolving Tax Debts, and Resolving Payroll Tax Debts. So now let's welcome Eric to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's awesome to have you here. And I think this is going to be the first of a few. But for those that are listening that don't know what Eric this is, well, they do know who it is because they just heard your intro. But why don't you share with them who you are, where you're at, what you've created, before we get into our chat today.
Okay. So I'm Eric Green. I am one of the founders of a boutique tax law firm, Green Sklarz. We are 22 people in 3 offices in New York and Connecticut. I also I create a tax rep network, which is it's more bi-weekly podcast, but it's actually a coaching program for accountants to build their IRS representation practices, because that's basically what I do is I represent taxpayers before the IRS and Department of Justice in civil and criminal tax matters.
Love it. No, that's awesome. And I'm a big fan of the Tax Rep Network. And I know a bunch of people listening have heard me, on your webinars and podcasts. So now you get to hear from Eric, because what we're talking about today, and he's going to share a personal story too, right, Eric, about what you and I had discussed. And he's going to give us an update if you've been following this story. But, nothing's really that easy. And I think for a lot of people who are trying to grow a firm with less clients, more revenue, higher lifetime value of a client, it sometimes feels like you're spinning your wheels or like you're on this hamster wheel. And for those that are really trying to build up their IRS representation case part of their business, which is going to be the more valuable work, you can do it with value pricing. And by the way, Eric can teach you all that. It's hard. It's not easy. So Eric, before we start into today, what's your definition of abundance? Like if you had to have, or not if you had, you have the firm of abundance right now. You've got Tax Rep Network, which is creating that life of abundance for you. Like, how would you define that so everyone listening can understand your perspective before we hear your stories?
So abundance to me, it runs parallel with the way I would define freedom. What is freedom? Freedom and abundance isn't about a particular amount of dollars. What it is having the freedom to do what you want. So for instance, to make enough money so you're comfortable, so you're not a hamster on a wheel, to be able to spend time with friends and family, to do those things. You've heard the saying, no one at the end of their life ever wished they spent more time in the office. To build something, whatever that is, that works for you, that you're not working for it.
Yeah, you're not working for it. That's the key ingredient right there. Yeah, I haven't met anyone that says they wishes they spent more time in the office. Have you? Okay.
No, not, and certainly not at the end of their life. So, but it's very easy to get caught up.
Yeah.
It's very easy, and I was there a few years ago.
Can you share that time and that moment when you were caught up? Because we all get caught up and we all run into these roadblocks and hurdles. But at some point you get so caught up that you hit this breaking point. What was that for you?
So I was actually interviewed by one of the large national organizations, and the person interviewing me made a comment about how I've always been uber successful. It bothered me then. It actually disturbed me a lot more, because that's not actually what happened. And I think that what happens is people see they kind of write you off because you've already done it, right? You're there.
Yeah.
And what people don't realize, so I was an accountant. I was an accounting major from Hofstra. I was not a great accountant. I never really loved it, but I just knew it was something that was good to be involved in, right? It was the center of business. And so I became an accountant, and I hated it. I hate it. And by the way, when you hate something, it shows. All right. So I hated that. I ended up becoming an internal auditor, and I went to law school at night at New England School of Law. So I would be at work at 7 a.m., work until 4:30, walk over to the law school, grab something to eat. And at 5:45, I was in law classes till 9:30, Monday through Thursday. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I just did work. Wow. Got out, went to KPMG, who laid me off after 2 years. I went to Deloitte, who laid me off after 2 years. And the comments that I was getting were basically like, the way they had put it at Deloitte was, you know what, Eric, you have to let the game come to you, meaning I'm clearly stepping on people's toes. And it got to the point where I lost jobs 3 times in a row. Not because I wasn't smart enough, not because I couldn't really do it, but what dawned on me is I'm not happy. And that's clearly coming through. And you cannot be good at something you don't like.
Yeah.
It's very hard to fake it. And I ended up going into basically starting my own practice, which was estate planning. And when I tell you, so we had bought our first house, we had our first child. I had met with clients and I would go at night. And I remember my wife saying, why are you running around at night? They should come to you. And I needed the work. Yeah. I'm not going to sit there, and say, well, no, if you don't come to me, I'm not going to do it. So I would go to them at night. That's when couples wanted to meet who wanted to do their estate plans. And I would get them out a letter the next day. And I had months where I would get the checks on Friday. They would show up in the mail, the retainer checks. I would work all weekend so I could bill and collect on Sunday, go to the bank on Monday, pull the cash out and pay my mortgage.
Wow. It was retainer check to retainer check living.
Oh yeah, no. And it was a grind, but I ended up having a client that got into tax trouble and I don't know what I'm doing. So I go and I meet with this revenue officer and I'm trying to explain this big picture. And he's now since retired. His name was Jim. And Jim looks at me. He looked kind of like Santa Claus. He looks at me across the table and said, you have no idea what you're doing, do you? And I said, and I figured, well, he knows. I'm like, nope. He said, look, you got to get these people into compliance. I'm like, what's compliance? Okay, let's start from the beginning. See, back then, for those of you listening, and for those of you who are younger, there used to be these things at the IRS called people, and you could actually meet with them. And they taught me how to do this. You see, today, there's tremendous opportunity now in this, but there aren't really people at the IRS to deal with. And so the pressure's on for people to be really trained. But at the time, that's what I did. So I helped this one client, and you would think that people would keep that to themselves, right? Tax troubles. Yeah, no. They went and told everyone at the country club.
Because they all had the same problems.
Oh, yeah, no. And my son owes sales tax and this and that. And so, by the way, I end up going and getting involved in what is my national association, is the American Bar Tax Section, which is huge. I don't know. I hardly know anyone. And I just, at some point, the big criminal penalties committee said, we need someone to work on this project, which didn't sound fun, but I just volunteered, figuring I need to meet people.
Yeah, you need to learn.
I actually became friends with a guy, Chuck Reddick, who, by the way, now 20 years later, is our IRS commissioner.
Wow.
All right. The network I did. And so you get out of that stuff what you put into it. So a lot of people, you may hear this, why do I belong to AICPA? Why do I belong to NATP? If you don't do anything, you'll get nothing out of it. But if you actually go and get involved, you will meet incredible people from all over the country, from inside the government, in private practice, in private industry. And in fact, like right now, if my firm imploded, let's say I had a fight with my friends, I could take my practice, move anywhere in the country, and I'd have a practice to go sit with. I have friends all over the country. Because
you put in what I call relationship capital. Right? Like you've built these relationships similar to what, you and I are building and others in the industry. And that when you build this relationship capital, you get in what you get out of it. So you can belong to 5 different groups, but if you don't show up to anything, you don't help any of the people. When we give more, you get more in return. So Eric, like if you had to give someone an actionable step that worked for you, right? When you became and built relationship capital with Chuck Reddick, and you could get up and pick up and move and end up in Scottsdale, Arizona if you wanted to, and be totally good. For someone who's part of 3 different organizations, what's like 2 different things that you would say they should do right now to get something out of it?
Well, all right. Well, so Michelle, what I would say is before that, as part of it, I'm a big fan of what I call engineering backwards. So for instance, what do you want your day, and what do you want your day to look like? What do you want your year to look like? What do you want your life and your practice to look like? Whatever it is, I don't care how pie in the sky it is. What is it? And so for me to have a personal assistant, I wanted to have a staff of people who could do this. I wanted to deal with clients and mostly sell, because when I really looked in the mirror, that is, dealing with people was my strength. Sitting strapped to a desk, banging through numbers was not. You could look at my earlier career. I tried to do stuff that just wasn't I wasn't well suited for. I didn't have an interest in it. And so being honest with myself, okay, that's what I want. And so I looked around and found people that were like that. Chuck Reddick was one of them. He was a big rainmaker at his firm, spoke everywhere. I'm going to tell you something. So I speak for AICPA, NATP, CCH, ABA tax. I am not a rocket scientist by any stretch of the imagination, okay? But you look at people that are doing what you want and just copy them. It's not that hard, all right? Chuck was speaking, so I volunteered for a committee, and the committee would say, we have to put together a panel. So what I would do is I would put together a panel, but I would find people that I wanted to meet. So for instance, I'll tell you, I needed to know the director of collections. I do a lot of resolving tax debts for taxpayers. Well, since then, Fred Schindler and I have been very good friends for 20 years. I text him on the weekends. I know his kids. I know his wife. He's met my wife. So what I would do is I would arrange things to meet them. So I want to do a panel on this. So the committee would help put me in touch with them. Oh, we know Mr. Schindler. Let's give him a call. Well, Fred's my age. So he said, sure, I'll do the panel with you. And we would do that, and you get to know them. And so now I can pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I think there's something screwy with this case. Can you have someone look at it? And they do. And it's not that Eric is magical or so brilliant. I built those networks. So I think what you do is you start with, what do you want to do? Then you look at your organization. So if you're involved in AICPA, I have been working with Sid Kess for AICPA, let's say an IRS representation, to do more of that. So I think you tell AICPA, or you join that committee, but actually participate, get on the monthly call, which, by the way, is a pain in the neck. You're spending time, no one's paying you, and trust me, I know the pressures of having to run and pay the mortgage and do the other things.
Well, yeah, you used to do that on Sunday, and you would collect retainers and go to the bank on Mondays, like you said. I mean, but again, you put in the effort to get the result out of it. And like you said, if you're going to be on the AICPA, you're going to join the committee, you can't not show up to the calls every month. And it's funny you should bring this up. I was doing this other group thing, and it conflicted with my schedule. And there was just no way I could make these once a month meetings. And when I could, I would always show up about an hour late. So I felt really disconnected. And if you're in an organization or in a group and you feel that way, I don't know what your point of view is, Eric, but for me, I would say either step up and make it work or just step away, because it's not doing you any good except having these cycles in your thoughts like, oh, it's such a waste. I'm part of 4 organizations. I'm not getting anything out of it. And you have to really think about, where do you take responsibility? What are you putting in to get out, like Eric was saying?
So first of all, I have my law practice.
Yeah.
I have the coaching program. I'm speaking at least 4 times a month on webinars. Now, it used to be in person, but mostly webinars now because of the current, the pandemic. Here's what I would tell you. And it doesn't have to be IRS. If you really want to do estate planning, you will go join that committee and get involved, all right? You will get back what you put in. And the fact is, everyone has time. I don't buy people that say, I have no time, all right? I got up at 5 this morning. I worked out. So by 5:45, I got my workout out of the way. I've got my coffee. I went through my emails by 6:15, and I can do what I need to do. All right. I don't tend to watch a lot of TV. I just don't. So I'm doing a lot of marketing. If you want to build, if you're working somewhere, you want to build something, you have time, right? You can work 9 to 5, spend a few hours with your family. All right. Let me tell you something, because I did this. From 8 to 11 at night is plenty of time to do damage, plenty of time to do your marketing, do your webinars, write your newsletter, whatever it is, do your podcast. There is time to do that.
There is.
All right. Stop watching fucking TV. Turn the TV off, right? And put your effort into something, right? Find your discipline and just go to it. In fact, in many ways, it's weird. I have more freedom because I have discipline. I have the discipline to get up in the morning, get my workout done, all right?
Me too. We have that in common. Every day I will wake up and go to the gym. I get it out of the way, and it's a great, start to my day. And someone, who might be listening, you might be like, well, I don't work out, or maybe you can go on a walk, read a chapter in your book, listen to a meditation. It requires discipline. At the end of the day, I think that's the home run takeaway, is that what can you do to create discipline? But then also, out of these organizations that you're a part of, choose one and go all in, and then make that work. Join the committee, but participate, like you were saying, Eric. I think that's really huge. When you were paying, retainer to retainer, week to week, paying the mortgages, like how many years ago was that?
Let me think about that. I started my own practice. We moved to Connecticut in 2001. I got laid off in 2003. I started my own practice with a buddy of mine. He bought an accounting practice, so I started my own law practice, and we shared space. That would have been probably around 2004. And then, I joined another corporate firm. I didn't want to do corporate work. I hooked up with some former IRS trial attorneys who gave me a desk, but they were there to ask, I could bounce information off of. Yep. And it's amazing how you can become a great marketer and speaker when your back is against the wall. Yeah. So yes, I've spoken in Vegas for AICPA, but I also spoke in a bar where someone actually fell asleep in the front row. It was a forensic accounting group here in Connecticut, and it was at a karaoke bar at 6 p.m. is where they held their meeting. It was cheap, right? Because the bar really wasn't going to get going until 8. The
guy that fell asleep in the front row, did he have too many cocktails? Or was the
No, I think he just got there, was tired from work, and found me uber exciting.
Well, I mean, from the webinars I've been on with you, I think they are very uber exciting. I think what you're doing is super important, and clearly a lot of people need your help. Just like the one guy you were talking about that looks like Santa Claus, Jim. He told all his buddies at the country club, and now you've got a slew of clients.
Yeah. The other thing too is, you're going to want a board of directors, meaning, now flash forward. So the law firm is going, I'm grinding myself to death. Yeah. I mean, I'm to the point where I'm reaching breaking point. There aren't enough hours in the day. I literally am so stressed out. I can't keep up because I'm bringing in the work, and then I got to do the work. And it sort of reached a point. Meanwhile, the coaching program, it sort of tapped out. It really just wasn't moving anywhere. And I'm walking around telling my wife and my law partner, people, the accountants, they're simply too cheap. They don't understand the opportunity, blah, 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 blah. Well, as it turns out, I'm driving in on a Saturday because I got to do work. I'm going in to work, which pisses my wife off. It pisses my kids off. It pisses me off. But I got to do it. And I'm listening to an interview with Bedros Keuilian, who, if you don't know who he is, started Fit Body Bootcamp, which has nothing to do with anything except that he told this story where he couldn't get people to buy. And he was telling his mentor, people are too cheap. They don't get it. Does that sound familiar?
Well, I think this is a great discussion for those listening, because I think they do hear it. People are too cheap. They don't want to pay a lot. They don't want to buy. So continue. Tell the Fit Body Bootcamp story, because I actually don't know this, and I'm a huge fitness fanatic.
So his mentor looked at him and said, no. If they're not buying what you're selling, the problem is you. It's your messaging. And I thought about that on the drive-in. I'm like, my God, he's right. The problem is me. Whatever it is I'm saying is not enticing the people, the accountants on the other end, to say, I see what Eric Green sees. And so I found somebody who is in the accounting world, who is a marketer and is very successful. And so I call her and she picks up on a Saturday. And I told her who I was. She said, I've heard you speak. And I said, okay. And I told her my story. She said, look, I do coaching. She said, I'll send you over a PayPal link, pay for the first month, but I have to warn you, I got to spend a week or two just looking at your stuff. So please send me the links. I send over the stuff. So she calls me 3 days later and she says, you have something everybody needs. You have something that people can make a lot of money at. Your messaging sucks. And I said, exactly. And so she basically said, are you willing to let me, I want to rewrite your copy with you. I want to work on your SEO, which will help. She said, but you're approaching this the wrong way. You're approaching it as you can give these people expertise. What you're not explaining to the accountants is how do they turn this into a practice? And with the bottom line. And so it was a slight tweak. But when I suddenly began explaining how we help people and why we make the money that we make, I think my membership may have doubled in about a month. Like overnight, the pitch, I hate to say pitch because it's not so much a pitch. It's really, my members don't quit. I've had members now for 5-6 years consistently.
But you know why, Eric? Because they put in what they get out, right? So if they show up, they're getting value and they're not just paying a membership and not doing the work. They're actually doing the work.
No, absolutely. And the fact is, I'm always still learning. So I'm doing my podcast and I have a guest and I mentioned to the guest, I'm $500 an hour. I charge $500 for a consult. And my guest, this wackadoo, Michelle Weinstein, on my podcast in front of my audience tells me, yeah, you're too cheap, double it. And I'm like, huh? And she said, double it, you're $1,000 starting tomorrow.
Well, I asked you permission first.
I'm like, okay. Well, I have to, so here's the interesting thing, because we're all working from home now. I got my personal assistant and my chief lieutenant, Amanda, and I mentioned what had gone on in the podcast. And the first thing they said is, it's about time. I said, really? They noticed it. They said, we are so busy. They said, we should get more upfront. We're telling people how to resolve their matters. She said, you're giving advice that is saving people, in one case, 27 million, but most cases, tens of thousands or sometimes hundreds of thousands. She said, you tell people about just calling it for first-time abatement. She said, we had someone a few months ago, 37 grand they knocked off, and so we did. And I haven't tracked it the last 2 weeks, but this was about a month ago. The first 2 weeks, Michelle, I got to report to you, 12 for 12. I didn't do 1,000, by the way. I did 950. Psychological thing about the number. So we went from 500 to 950, 12 out of 12 signed and paid without question.
All right. So are you up for a new challenge, Eric? And anyone listening, because others have actually followed suit because I heard from them, by the way, Eric. So when we did that podcast on your show, that I actually heard that some people followed suit and, were just doing phone calls for people 30 minutes to an hour and never charged. And then they started charging $500. So you did make an impact. But if you're batting 100%, you're missing opportunities.
Exactly. And in fact, I told Amanda I was coming on your podcast today, and Amanda said, if she wants to double it, tell her I think it's too much, but 1,500 is what we should do.
All right. So let's do $1,497, or do you like $1,495?
No, actually, I like the 1,500.
Okay. All right. 1,500 it is. And Amanda, you can report results, and we'll have Eric back here on the Abundant Accountant podcast, definitely again in the future to report. And if any of you are listening who are saying, wow, if Eric can do that, yes, you can do it too. Because all it really is like you were, saying, it's a slight tweak. And when we make a slight tweak and just giving away expertise or just sharing your knowledge with people or helping them with a first-time abatement, and then all of a sudden you save someone $37,000. By the way, Eric, I don't even know what that means, but that doesn't matter. If you don't charge for that, your time, and Eric, you've been doing this a long time and you've got a lot of expertise and you're one of the top in the industry. I like the jump to 1,500 right away, but I think we're going to see another jump here in the near future. What I want to share, though, with people listening is what are some of the objections or things that you hear from people who, I know you're batting 100% in last month, but prior that maybe haven't engaged with you? Because what I want to do is have a discussion just to tie it all up for the people listening. If you're not getting people to engage with you, or if you have people telling you, you know what, you're too expensive, or, I can't pay that. I owe the IRS money. Or how do you think I could pay you if I owe the government $100,000? How is that even possible? So what's one thing that you traditionally hear? And then let's go over a few different options for the listeners to overcome it. Because if you're listening, you should probably have a pen and paper right now.
Okay, so let's just be honest. There are some people you just don't want as clients.
Of course.
Pure and simple. There are some people who, if they don't understand the value. Now, I will tell you this. I don't just say, yeah, I want $950 because I want $950. What I'll tell them is, look, and this is when they call, it's actually Nicole, my assistant, that does this. What she'll say is, look, you're going to spend at least an hour with Eric. Here's what we need. We need the last 3 income tax returns. We need proof of your income. So if you're self-employed, please get your profit and loss done. Without it, there's not much we can do. And we give them a list of stuff. And what Nicole then says is, you're going to spend this time. Afterward, you should have a good idea what you can do and why. We charge for that. And I think what it is my clients realize it isn't like we're going to have a 10-minute phone call for $1,000. He's going to really look at my stuff. We ask for it in advance. And I tell them that our consult is only as good as what you provide me.
Similar to being a part of a committee. You get out what you put in. So it's a great analogy to share with your clients. I love analogies because I'm sure Nicole's probably dealt with, why do I have to give you 3 years of returns? I don't even know Eric. I'm sure you've heard the gamut, but if you share with someone, the documentation you provide is only as good as the information that in that hour that you're going to get with Eric. It's a game changer in that you're setting what I call the foundation on the front end.
Well, and the interesting thing is, again, not often, but I do get people that will say, well, blah, blah, blah. And honestly, Nicole, Amanda, and I, we are all trained. I mean, and I have law partners, Noelle and Lisa, and we've kind of agreed that, you know what? I don't think we're the right firm for you. We wish you the best of luck. And I will tell you this. I have people that, I think they're going to try to negotiate with me. We don't negotiate it. I'm not negotiating it. Now, I will tell you, we do a lot of pro bono work through the clinics. If I get a call from the low-income taxpayer clinic, absolutely. We do a fair amount of pro bono cases. But I like to tell my members, I'm all for pro bono work. I think it's a wonderful thing. We should all be giving back. But I like to pick my pro bono cases, not have them pick me.
Yeah.
Okay? So the person that thinks they're going to start negotiating, no, it's non-negotiable. And the reason, again, is we're going to do this. So, for instance, I mentioned the first-time abatement. What I will tell my members, I'm going to tell your audience, if you decide you never want to do an offer in compromise and you never want to resolve a tax debt, but you have someone who has a balance due, there is a very simple, easy way to make. Now, I would have said 1,000, but now it's going to be 1,500.
Yep.
You do the consult, all right? And what we will do, the IRS now has a program. It's a streamlined installment agreement. What that means is if you owe less than $250,000 and you can full pay within the time remaining on the 10-year collection statute, they don't need a financial, there's no analysis, just pick up the phone, call, and they will set it up right over the phone. So what we will do is we will call, and I have enrolled agents in my office that do this. And we have a service that we get right through to the IRS in like under 3 minutes. It's unbelievable. So they will call with a power of attorney, fax it over to the person at automated collections, and we ask 2 questions. Number 1, does the client qualify for first-time penalty abatement? If the taxpayer for the 3 prior years hadn't been penalized, you can get an automatic abatement of failure to file or failure to pay penalties on the first year. And it'll tell you right over the phone. So how do I know if they'll qualify or not? At this point, I don't. But you know what? If you don't ask, they're not going to offer it. So ask. The worst thing they'll say is, no, I'm sorry, they don't qualify. They were penalized 2 years earlier. Okay, well, we asked. The next thing is, how much is it for the Streamlined agreement? They'll do it. So for $1,500, we can knock whatever penalties off we can and set them up in an agreement. Done. It takes my staff under an hour on the phone, usually 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes up to a half hour, and maybe I spent an hour with them. It's a money spinner, and it's simple. But that's understanding the process, understanding there's a Streamlined agreement that's now $250,000 as of April, and understanding first-time abatement. Simple concepts. Actually, I have to tell you, tax resolution is not complicated. I mean, I can teach every one of your listeners in 2 hours how to do an offer that gets accepted. It's not complicated. It's just that no one teaches this stuff.
It's kind of like my sales stuff. No one teaches accountants this stuff.
You know, they teach you accounting, but they don't teach you business.
Right.
Like for me, and I have my accounting degree, I have a law degree, and I have a master's in tax. No one teaches tax resolution anywhere. It's one of those things that I learned by doing. Now I teach it, but there were no courses when I first started doing this. You kind of learn by doing it.
So when you say learn by doing it, for someone listening who wants to make the transition out of, regular bookkeeping, tax prep, compliance work, they want to shift into this tax resolution niche per se. Like, what are the first 2 steps? So, because they want to create the life of freedom to do what they want and when they want. They don't want to be doing pro bono work when it's not giving back, where that pro bono work is choosing them because they keep answering people's questions right when they call. Like, what do you think is that, a couple steps that they should make a change?
All right. Well, so the first thing, to do resolution work, you have to be a CPA, an enrolled agent, or an attorney. I do not recommend becoming an attorney if you're not one. So, and CPA is also a long haul. So if you are a bookkeeper or tax preparer who is not enrolled, first thing you do is go get your enrolled agent. Study it, just pass the exam and get that done. All right. Now you can be on a power of attorney. Now you instead of charging $80 to $90, $100, $150 an hour, you're immediately $250 an hour. All right. What I have told people who call me, because, Tax Rep Network, we do discount for the first few months, but $297 a month, it's a no-brainer if you got cases and are building your practice. But if you're just starting and want to get your feet wet, I would get the books. I would get the accountant's guides to collection and resolving tax debts. All 3 books are like $240. You'll read them in a weekend. And first of all, see if this is something you're really interested in. Right? If you find you find the strategy interesting, first of all, the books walk you through from start to finish. It's more that once you get started, what I tell people is, you're going to start getting clients. That's when you're sitting there saying, okay, I think I know what to do. But now you've got your $5,000 retainer. So now joining Tax Rep is a no-brainer. And you can go in and say, Eric, Amanda, here's where I am. Do you think I'm doing this right? What do you think I should do? Because that's really what it is. We do training, we do that. It's really a coaching program. And so we have a couple platinum members that are doing over $1 million a year. They have built their practices and they want to just buy more time. We used to do the $100,000 challenge, which the idea was to try to get our members over $100,000
in revenue for tax resolution work, right?
Exactly. And it was too low.
What's the average revenue that someone's doing in their, firm from tax resolution revenue?
Exactly. And what we found is after like the second year, Eric, everybody did it. It wasn't much of a challenge.
But what's the average now? What's the average revenue that your membership is doing?
I don't know across the board the average for total revenue, but I will tell you this. So we surveyed our members at the end of 2018.
Okay.
The average non-filer case. So by the way, there are 10 million non-filers that the government already knows about. Wow. All right. That's forgetting about coronavirus and everything else. That was at the end of December. That was December of 19. So a non-filer case, the average fees my members had from non-filer cases, $17,800 for one case. Now, why is that? Well, the non-filer comes in, and let's say they have to file the last 4 years of returns. There's bookkeeping, there's returns. Now we have to resolve the federal problem, and often, if you're in a state that has a state income tax, they probably have a state income tax problem. And if they're self-employed, they may have a sales tax problem.
So there's a lot of revenue to be made in this. Is that what you're telling me, Eric?
Exactly. And the other thing too, you mentioned this, Michelle, there's misinformation about why would I want to help these people? They're broke.
Yeah.
They're not broke. I mean, well, first of all, if they're truly broke, we refer them to the low-income taxpayer clinics. Let them go get free help. All right. If they're living at 2.5 times below the poverty line, get them to a low-income clinic. They are better served having the clinics help them for free. But like, for instance, I just made a family in New York uncollectible. They're making $165,000. They just don't have enough money to pay the back taxes and pay their current taxes and pay all their living expenses.
It's like these people just have massive cash flow problems.
Right. And I have people that have had horrific things happen to them you'd never wish on anyone. And then I've had people who just unfortunately cannot manage their finances. You know, when I first started our 6.5 years ago, I'm driving a Hyundai Sonata, right? I mean, that was the car I could afford. That's what I did.
6 years ago.
6 years ago. I had people coming into me that owed hundreds of thousands who were leasing Cadillac Escalades and have Harley Davidson motorcycles. Yeah. They're spending $1,200 a month on vehicles.
Yeah, you get to teach them about finances and P&Ls.
I'm beginning to get the sense of why you're in trouble.
Yeah, no, definitely.
There is an education aspect to it. But the fact is, at the end of December 19, you had more than 15 million. There was 15 million 2,000 accounts in the collection division inventory and 10 million non-filers that had been identified. So there were 25 million in trouble. The survey that was just done by the Tax Practice Advisor magazine newsletter came back that literally a third of the taxpayers surveyed will not be able to pay their 19 taxes in October. So you're talking now, what I'm hearing from the IRS executives that I'm friends with, they're very concerned of that $25 million number becoming a 25 million individual, number becoming 75 million.
Oh, it's about it. There's so much opportunity here, Eric. And I think what you're saying, if the average case of your members, the 17,000 in revenue per person, imagine a firm owner here, you just get one of those clients a month or one every other month. That's a great opportunity for you to transition out of the rat race or the hamster wheel that you're on and really create that, what your definition of abundance is, which I have the same. It's freedom to do what you want and when you want. And it's not always about the money, but the increase in revenue per client and you being able to help people get out of their situations probably brings you a lot of joy and happiness. So, Eric, I just want to say thank you for being here with us today on the Abundant Accountant podcast. I'm very excited that your consultation fee is now going up to $1,500. Gosh, a lot has changed in the last couple months. And we're going to have you back on to get an update, have more discussions, and get more into the details of, maybe some of the challenges that you have when enrolling these clients, and we can go through some role play scenarios. So we'll call this part 1. What do you say?
That sounds fine. And the interesting thing, and I'll leave you with this. So the coaching thing, just background. So I started, as I told you about speaking in the karaoke bar, I would get my clients by inviting accountants in and speaking. Well, I had a CPA come up to me about 10 years ago who said, I'll pay you if you would teach me to do this. And said, don't worry about paying me, but that was fascinating. And I created this coaching program. I licensed it to CCH for a few years. It was the IRS Rep Certificate Program. I got the rights back. We have just relaunched that. So if there are people who are interested in really learning this, it's 20 hours. Audit, collections, offers and compromise, resolving payroll taxes, and innocent spouse. So there's 20 CPE credits. If people are interested, if you go to Tax Rep LLC, you can check out the certificate program. We literally launched it 3 days ago.
Perfect. Okay, Tax Rep LLC, and it will be in the show notes too, okay? So.
All right, listen, and Michelle, thank you for both your consulting with me and having me.
Of course. No, it's super fun. I absolutely love teaching sales to all of you who are offering tax resolutions so you can change up your messaging. Because like Eric said, it has to do with you. You're kind of the problem. Just like the Fit Body Bootcamp story. Eric, if you could shoot me that interview or link, I'll put it in here for people to click to go listen to. But, if they're not buying what you're offering, or, the problem's you. So until you change, you're not going to really get different results. So thank you so much, Eric, for being here. It was always fun. And I will be in touch for our next part 2 episode.
Sounds great. Thank you.
What an amazing episode with Eric Green. Gosh, Eric, you can talk for days, and I could just listen for days, but I'm super excited to see what you end up charging. Not charging. I know you're going to charge $1,500 per consultation, but maybe for those of you listening who's charging, $500, I got some emails from some of you. Maybe some you want to go up to $950. But if you are going to be doing, what is that thing called? When you call the IRS on behalf of the client, the first time abatement, I think you should start charging for that, and send me an email or actually post on the Apple Podcast review, a review about how much you love this podcast, and then add in there what you started charging for first time abatements if you do representation work. But I love his 2-step approach. For those of you that are offering this, it sounds like a pretty easy breezy, streamlined process for those that owe, what do you say, under $250,000 to the government. God, that's a lot of money. Glad I'm not ever going to be a part of that department. So a few things in the show notes. I will put the interview with the founder of Fit Body Bootcamp, because as you all know, I love sales and teach it to you. But if the clients really aren't buying what you're selling, then the problem is you. So if you need to change yourself and you need a little bit of help, I would say the first step for you to do is go to the 5stepstoabundance.com. It is my 5-step process that a lot of accountants have used to go from waiting around for clients just to show up in their inbox to actually closing high-level clients like Eric talked about, average value per client, $17,000 annual revenue, and having them say yes to paying you what you're worth and not how much you think they can afford or what you think, they should pay you, but actually going based on your worth and how people and clients will actually appreciate the work you do for them. So again, if people are not buying what you're selling, then it's a you problem. So let's focus on you. Again, I can start helping you. It is completely complimentary over at the 5stepstoabundance.com. If you're interested in collecting higher fee type clients that are averaging $17,000 in revenue, doing it with confidence and getting paid like the expert that you are. So once again, 5stepstoabundance.com. It was lovely being here with you and Eric today. Also, just a reminder, today's episode is brought to you by Abatement. So if you're really looking to focus on growth, sales, and revenue, it all starts from that very first call. So don't let those missed opportunities slip through the cracks any longer, and capture those opportunities without even having to pay for a full-time receptionist by using Abatement. Abatement, again, is super unique. You will be assigned a small team of receptionists that customize all of the call handling for you. And you will have all your pricing from them up front with no extra add-ons or fees. So make sure to try it out. Get your free trial along with a very special offer over at abbyconnect.com. And don't forget to mention the Abundant Accountant Podcast. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next episode.